How's it going, YouTube? It's your boy Next coming at you with a deck profile today. Today I'm bringing you Shaddoll Chimera. This deck is one of those really interesting new decks that's come out ever since the Chimera cards dropped, and I really wanted to talk about it because since building it, I've been testing it, and it's been doing some sort of insane plays, but it's also just been going through any kind of combo board and just playing through it. Very few boards actually stop you in your tracks, and it's usually like Vanadium with their counter trap because they can usually get you in trouble. But I'll just go through the deck list and we'll talk about it. So the bread and butter of the deck, and why you choose to go second usually, is the three Shaddoll fusions. This card is insane. Lets you fusion summon from the deck, just like Branded Fusion, but you make any Shaddoll monster, and when we get to the extra deck, I'll explain why this is mostly important for the deck and why it inherently makes your combo stronger. We have two Squamata, two Hedgehog, one Beast, one Dragon, two Wendy, and one Genius. Now it's a little weird in my list because we're not playing Ariel. Ariel is one of those monsters that everybody gravitates to because they really like the triple DD Crow, and I think in a lot of formats that's really powerful. In this format, it's okay. I think the only deck that really requires their graveyard is Dragonlink and Vanadium, and even in those matchups, making them go first, Dragonlink is the only one that has like a ton of rechargeability, and Vanadium can sort of hit you with a clapback if they open really well, but usually they end with like one card in hand anyway. So the idea is that if you break a board, you're not really going to have to worry about the clapback. And then, so like the aerial is really not there for that stuff, for that. And like if anything, it's a side card in my opinion. Genius is there mostly just because like the amount of times I've just targeted an Apo and just made it so it can't activate its effects. Or different types of Omni negates because you can chain block stuff with this, and then they never want to like they can negate this, but usually they just negate whatever negate it with whatever you're targeting with it. So it's one of those it's impulse on graveyard effect. Um and we don't play the Hell Shaddoll mostly because there isn't a reason to mill that many cards in the deck. And it's mostly just because you want your monsters to fuse with. Unlike the Invoke Shaddoll list, which is like just because you've put Alistair in the graveyard, it lets you become more playable. The idea is more that you want to draw on this deck, so that's why we have like the multiple Hedgehog and Beasts become more centerfold, and then Dragon is just there as a name mostly, and it's also very nice because a lot of decks require field spells or back row. Being able to chain block stuff with this, and then being able to pop something like the Maname Reframing, I think is the name of the trap card that's in the Omni Negate counter trap. So as long as they don't negate your fusion spells when you get to this, because typically they won't negate, they won't, if they negate, they'll tend to negate this if they know what you're playing, and then like they won't negate the polymerization. So if you can force it out for this, then that's the biggest plus that you can really do. Um, and then you play the one Shaddoll Fusion and one Shaddoll Schism. I should have put them with the other Shaddoll cards, but well, we can talk about them real quick. So this is just there for the extra fusion spell. There is a proclivity for bricking on fusion spells in this deck. But the fact that it's quick play is one of the things that lets you that makes it really huge, and then it doesn't banish like Schism does. So like these are your two Shaddoll cards that let you stay fused on your opponent's turn. And then the send effect on the Schism is really good. One of the big things with these is that without the Invoke Dungeon, you don't have Meltdown, which protects all your fusion summons from being responded to. So your chain links have their last card vulnerable, so you have to build your chain links correctly. Which is why being able to fuse on both turns is really important in my opinion. If we were able to play Invoke, El Shaddoll Fusion would be technically cuttable in a lot of ways, but we just wouldn't have as many cards to fuse in the opponent's turn. And then technically the last Shaddoll card is Foolish Burial. Sorry, it's a little. We have the Platinum Rare. Foolish Burials for obvious reasons, sending any Shaddoll name starts your combo. For the Chimera engine, and we can talk about these because these cards are all relatively new. So we have Gazelle. Gazelle's a really interesting card because on summon, when he's normal or special summon, you can search for a fiend monster or Chimera fusion. But you mostly use him as fusion material from the deck to make Shekinaga to add an illusion monster from your deck. Typically, you add Sword Knight, and we'll talk about them more as we go. And then you have three Big Wing Baphomet, and then Baphomet on summon is search for Gazelle and one of your you search for a Gazelle and or one of your three Chimera fusions. But also when Big Wing Baphomet is set to the graveyard as fusion material, you can target an illusion monster and special summon it, which is really big because it lets you summon Sword Knight from graveyard and lets you do it on your opponent's turn again, so you can just have like near infinite supplies of stuff. The three Chimera fusion. So Chimera fusion is kind of busted in a lot of ways. Chimera Fusion, it lets you, during the main phase, so it does have to be main phase, but it lets you fusion summon one fusion monster from your extra deck using monsters in your hand or field as material. But as long as you use but you have to use at least one fiend and a beast monster or a beast monster. So as long as it includes those, you're good. But also if this goes in the graveyard and you have Chimera the Flying Mythical Beast in the field, or in the graveyard, you can just add this back to your hand. So, and that's what's returned, but activating it isn't. So you can fuse twice with this card during any turn, and then uh, it's just crazy. And then like you can also banish this to summon stuff from your deck. It's awesome. So because it's they have, here I'll read the exact effect actually now that I said it out loud. So you can banish this card, and if you do, special summon both one Gazelle, King of Mythical Beasts, and one Baphomet from your deck, and or graveyard. So like that effect never comes up, but like realistically, if you could, it would be funny. But and then the last Chimera cards are three Mirror Sword Knight and three Codal. So these guys have graveyard effects and either hand or field effects. So Sword Knight is the one that's really insane, so we'll read him first. So both the illusion monsters have the same effect where if they battle a monster, neither can be destroyed. But also if this card is on the field, it's a quick effect to tribute it for cost to special summon Baphomet from deck. Uh, I think it. I mean, typically you do Baphomet, but you can also summon Gazelle. As long as the card mentions Chimera Fusion, you can do it. And then if this is in the graveyard and you have Chimera, the Flying Mythical Beast in the field, you can banish this card to negate a monster effect. As long as your opponent controls the effect, and or controls the monster activating it. And then Cornfield Codal is discard to add any illusion monster to your hand, or any card that mentions Chimera Fusion to your hand, other than itself. So you can discard this to add Mirror Knight. And then normal Mirror Knight, Tribute Mirror Knight is summon Baphomet. Baphomet adds Chimera Fusion and Gazelle, so like that's your main combo. But then if this is in the graveyard and you control a Chimera, you can banish this from the graveyard to negate any card that targets. So if your opponent activates Imperm while this is in the graveyard and you have Chimera on field, you can just banish this from the graveyard and negate the Imperm basically. Or Book of Moon, or Cashier Fenrir, any of that stuff. It wouldn't be a proper Shaddoll deck, in my opinion, without the Frightfur package. So three Patchwork, two Chain, and two Poly. Um, Patchwork, best plus two card, lets you add these two. When this is sent to graveyard, lets you add this. And then Poly is insane when you play it with Chimera Fusion, and because Edgent Chain is a fiend, you can use that with Chimera Fusion. As long as you use Chimera Fusion, you can use that with any of your stuff to make insane plays. And then the last six cards are power spells, actually. So we play three Super Poly and we play three Droplet, which seems a little weird considering that like Cashier is a thing. But this deck actually has a decent Kashtira matchup because as long as you can out the single Rise Heart, which to be fair isn't super hard with the deck, um, you're fine because like any because your deck has so many dark monsters to begin with, setting any Shaddoll monster is full combo at that point. Because if you have Super Poly, then you just out it with like half your deck, and then the extra deck. So for the extra deck, we have two Shaddoll Construct. I've been thinking of cutting this down to two. Because we're not playing the Invoked version, we don't have the proclivity to go into Artemis as much, which, and we're not playing the Dogmatica stuff because we're also not on that, so we don't have tons of access to light monsters. We do play Sword Knight, and because that is a light, we can summon this. But I have been heavily debating putting this to one. I think the card that I would replace it with is probably like Magnum the Reliever, but I'm not entirely sure what I would put in right now. Magnum does have a ton of cards to banish in this deck that you can use, but a lot of those cards recycle themselves, so you're not always trying to get rid of them. We have two Apcolon. Apcolon is super important to the deck, in my opinion. Being able to make it from your deck with Shaddoll Fusion to, and then chain block it to permanegate stuff on the field is so good. It forces your opponent to use effects or lose their cards, and it's really nice. Part of the deck that makes it so good is Winda, being able to do your combo and then slap Winda on your opponent's turn to limit their plays. Super important, very interesting. One Shekanaga. Shekanaga is probably what makes the combination of these two decks so good. It's also what makes us able to play tier elements, the Shaddoll tier elements viable in a lot of ways. Because you can send like the issues cards, but in this case we're sending Gazelle usually with this, so you tend to send like either Hedgehog or Squamata and Gazelle and summon this. She has a 3k defense body, so when you're going first, or when you're for if you're going first and you end up being able to make it, if you're able to make it going first, summoning it in defense mode is a big wall, and it's a monster negate. Um, Also being able to put this onto the board, chain block your Gazelle with the Hedgehog, and then if as long as you get to a Shaddoll monster in your hand or already have one for this, you can pretty much just start negating things immediately. And then all of these, I should say, all four of these have the effect to recycle Shaddoll spells and traps when they go to graveyard, and then Avcalone lets you add your Schism to hand or any Shaddoll card from deck or graveyard and then discard a card. So it's very important in that respect. For the Chimera fusions, or for the fusion monsters, for the Chimera fusion monsters, sorry, we have Chimera, the King of Phantom Beasts, and Chimera, the Illusion Beast. So to explain these, Chimera, the King of Phantom Beasts, activates on summon and then resolves during the end phase. To make your opponent send one card randomly from their hand to the graveyard. So it's a nice way to go into turn 3 or 4, just making sure your opponent doesn't have stuff in their hand, or as many cards in their hand. It gives you the advantage in a lot of ways. And then while it's in the graveyard, you can banish it and target any illusion, beast, or fiend monster and special summon it. So having it in the graveyard isn't a huge detriment, but you can banish it and then just start going full combo again. And then it's just really nice to have that. And then being able to make Chimera the Illusion Beast is really good. So it's this guy, because his name counts as Chimera the Flying Mythical Beast while it's on the field or in the graveyard. So then having Chimera the Illusion Beast is really important because it really, really outsboards in a lot of ways if you get to him. So it's him plus any amount of illusion monsters as material. So at least one. So if you do 2 illusion monsters, this guy can attack 3 times, and when he attacks a monster, he makes the attack of that monster 0 and permanently negates their effects. And then he can keep attacking. And then neither monster is destroyed by the effect. So like if your opponent has like a 6k monster, right? you summon this with him and we'll say 2 Sword Knight, then you can attack the 6K monster, take the 29 damage. The monster's attack becomes 0 and goes down to and it gets its effect permanently negated. But because it's an illusion monster, neither monster is destroyed by battle, right? So then you attack it again for 3100 and attack again for 6200. So, and then if you have another one of him on the board, attack it with that and it's game. Or most likely, when you do that afterwards, attack it with one of your 2 Guardian Chimeras, which is the other Chimera card that you play technically, and it's 3300. So 3131 plus 33 is 95, and that's definitely game for the most part. But also, Guardian Chimera is an insane card. Being able to use its effect to either draw 1 or 2, and then pop 1 or 2, depending on the materials it uses, is crazy. And then because we play Polymerization, it's also untargetable most of the game. So, yeah, it's definitely an interesting mechanic. And then we do play the 1 Dragostapelia. I think Dragostapelia is super important to the combos and super important to the deck because being able to super poly your fusions that you've already used for stuff into Dragostapelia just because you have a dark monster. It also helps when you're playing against fusion decks. Tier limits can be a big issue in some ways because they just keep playing from the graveyard on your turn. Um, the mirror match when they're playing branded Chimera is pretty interesting. So being able to have being able to have the Dragon Stapelia is really important. And then the last 2 cards are Mudragon and Garura. These are your generic super poly targets for decks, and generally, I don't actually tend to go into them as often, except for Mudragon. Mudragon I definitely go into a lot, but the Garura is situational depending on the deck that I'm playing against. But I found that Mudragon is one of the easier ones to go into because a lot of decks play dark monsters. And it's weird because Gazelle, being being an Earth beast has led to me having a lot of boards where I can out them, and it's the same thing with Cornfield Codal. Because with Wendy and Codal, you can actually super poly with Wendy or Codal with like a Flunderies card. And being able to make Mudragon off of that, which is crazy that you can actually like make them untargetable by Ryza with that. It's kind of nice. Now the side deck is a little weird right now. Um, there are some changes that I might do, but I'll go over the overall side deck here. So we have 2 Kaijus. We have 2 Radion. They're Fiend type, so we can fuse with them from the hand if we needed to. But also super poly with them because we can give them to the opponent. Them being Fiend is super important for that, and why we play it over Santa Claus is mostly just because the attack points don't matter, but your opponent not getting the draw from because of Santa Claus does. So, we play 2 Nibiru. I would play 3, but room is a little tight in the extra deck. And then we play 3 Droll because most decks that we don't like, we want to hit it with this. And most of the stuff is just when we can't play Super Poly in the deck because the deck is either weird and doesn't have a lot of good targets, or they end on too many cards that we need to hit that are all different. Like Vanadium is one of those things because they end on Barone. They end on like three different synchro monsters of different types that we have to either play super specific fusion monsters for Super Poly, or we have to just kind of accept the fact that they're gonna have weird monsters. So that's why the Kaijus, the Nibs, and the Trolls are in the deck. Is for decks like that. Um, Mostly just so you can shut down your opponent's plays, and then hopefully they don't draw you on the clapback. Um, because this is a blind go second deck, but it's for stuff like that, and it's the same thing with like Dark Ruler. Um, Decks with like 5 Omni Gates on board, like Vanadium when uninterrupted. Um, it's mostly just this. We have also three evenly matched. This is mostly for back row decks. So when you're going second to a back row deck, um, usually your Shaddoll fusions don't get to go off, except for like against Altergeist. As long as you make sure to like hit the things around Hextia. So the idea is that you just go battle phase, wipe out back row, except for like one thing, and then pop off. And then your last two cards are Eradicator Virus. Normally I would play like two Cyclone, but Eradicator Virus is one of those things that's really fun because you can just tribute Abcalone or Dragostapelia or Guardian Chimera. Or you can tribute your Illusion Beast, and then you can banish the Chimera King of Phantom Beast to bring him back after you've tributed him. So he never left the field technically. So you can just go off from there. It's pretty nice. But that's the side deck. For what I was testing. It's so the deck is fun. The deck does a lot of playing through stuff. So like typically the idea is that like you're going to drop Shaddoll fusion, bait out one of your monsters, the opponent's monsters negates, activate droplet, sending fusion and like Edge Chain or something to the graveyard, and then being able to construct the chain link off of everything because you sent like Edge Chain can trigger with the Shaddoll monsters you send. The cards you send off this trigger, so you would be able to go like, cool, we'll do chain link, one Gazelle, two Squavana, three chain off that, and you negated two monsters from just these two cards. Which this will become a plus three. This will be a plus three, and this is just a not negate for two cards in your hand. And if you're going second, you have four other unknowns in your hand. And then this is going to become Codal, and this is going to become usually Hedgehog. And then obviously this becomes Patchwork. So you just got three cards, and at the end of it, you're gonna have seven cards in your hand and a monster to get on board. Or eight at the end of everything, because you're gonna send a Hedgehog most likely. You're gonna have eight cards, sorry, and a monster to get on board. And your opponent's gonna have two cards negated technically from that. So like unless they have a counter trap, typically like opening Droplet and or unless they have a counter trap or they have a Rise Heart face up in the field at that time, that's going to be um an insane plus for you. And it's a two card combo that comes up pretty frequently. The deck is 42 cards, so like the idea of it being like hyper consistent isn't totally there, but the cutting stuff down is not really in the cards for the deck, in my opinion. I think that you want to see specific cards all the time. And you definitely want to see your monsters, so you have to run like a high amount of you have to run a high monster count. There isn't really enough cards in this deck that you can cut down to two or one. And like I already cut a lot of stuff. Like Codal is searchable in the deck, and but you still need two Codal because you want to for that negate effect, and opening is pretty good too. Your Chimera stuff needs to be at a 3 so you can fuse with it constantly. Because it's super recyclable, and being able to fusion summon Chimera like two or three times a game. Guardian Chimera both times in the same game. And Chimera King of Phantom Beast two times in a game is like super important to the deck. So being able to rip cards and destroy and draw. Like the idea of this deck is just you go really plus by playing through cards. You don't kill your opponent immediately sometimes, but you make it so your opponent is fighting an uphill battle constantly. But anyway, that'll be it for me. This deck is super fun as you can tell. I really enjoy playing it. Um, if you liked what you see, please consider subscribing. Check out Dubby up here. My code is TopSynex. Uh, Gets you 10% off your purchase and helps me out a ton. I'm actually waiting on my W stuff to come in, and I can actually let you guys know how it tastes, how it is. Yeah, I'll let you know. So thank you guys for watching. I'm still uploading 3 times a day. I do plan to start doing the 4 times a day again soon. But I'm going to save that for next month, I believe. because we're almost a partner. And I can't thank you guys enough for that. So, you guys have a wonderful day. Peace.